great to get back to these evaluations. I took a couple days off. Now we are going to dive right back into the Brev evaluations, and I'm going to evaluate them all over the next day or two. Starting with another entry by Eusebius. It's great to have you back in the Orchestration Challenge roster, Eusebius. I really have to say that your entry is excellent, and I probably will be commenting more about its features in terms of, what works rather than what doesn't. But I do have a couple of general comments, okay? And actually, it could just be one comment, and that is to try to avoid strategies that are familiar, or to try to avoid repeating doing things the same way in a row. Okay, so for instance, right here at the beginning, we've got solo flute, right, and then that's followed by solo oboe over the same exact range of notes. And then we've got solo clarinet right in here, right, over a similar range of notes, not exactly the same notes. But yeah, it's after a while the ear just becomes used to it and doesn't really pick out, flute solo. It's sort of more like, oh yeah, there's more wind solos here. The other possible danger here is gesturing towards a resolution, right? Like, for instance, glissando up, glissando down, these sort of flurries, and there are some other gestures. And in the context of the way that this piece ends, with a somewhat Holst-like series of arpeggios going back and forth in the harp and celesta, which are of a piece with that kind of playing, that kind of scoring. I'm wondering whether or not it might not be better to sort of back off on some of these, right? Like, this is a cool idea, but the harp seems to resonate with that, and then also, after a while, people start to notice, hey, the harp is really glissandoing a lot, right? Most of these gestures that decorations, you want them to be not, you don't want them to be so inconspicuous that nobody notices, but you don't want them to be so conspicuous that people notice. If you understand my, the paradox there, right? You want it to seamlessly feel part of the music. And I'm noticing a lot of entries, and it doesn't really matter how experienced the entrant is, how the participant is, whether they are just starting out or whether they obviously have some pro chops, as we see here. I'm seeing a lot of gesturing with the harp, like, hey, look at it over here, right? And I'm thinking maybe it's a good idea to sort of not to leave it out entirely, but to just use it as judiciously as possible, right? Okay, so those are my opening comments. So let's start off at the very, very beginning. It's interesting that the trill sound that you used had a very paced sound to it. I don't know if you noticed that, but it really sounded like almost as if it were a measured tremolo. And I almost wondered whether or not that might have been a direction you could have gone as well. So, very basic scoring at the beginning, pizzicato, then strings with that trill and the flute, and a little bit of harp here. This is the right way to score this harp, but just keeping in mind that the sound of this E string is going to die out by around halfway through this measure, right? It's realistically, that E is not really going to last. And considering how much bustle there is on the same note by the violins, second violins, it's probably, the resonance of the note its unique characteristics to the ear is probably going to end before the end of the first bar, right? So that's just an observation. My only issue here really is with the the dynamic balance. I think you could have easily just had this piano one solo, right? And then that's loud enough, right? It doesn't really need to be mezzo piano. Once again, my dictum, borrowed from Rimsky-Korsakov, is to not, to try to avoid solo entrances on mezzo dynamics, right? Because the mezzo quality is like the grayest quality, the grayest dynamic quality to an otherwise colorful instrument. It's not to say that the instruments sound bad. It's just to say that the most exquisite quality of that instrument is being veiled, right? Especially mezzo piano, right? So piano crescendo, that's a different thing, right? But like mezzo, it means more than just one notch up on the dynamic thermometer, right? But so just get away from the thermometer thinking. Just really think of mezzo piano as being a blending sound, right? Rather than being a soloistic sound. And then I think you're on the right track, right? So then you just scale the dynamics of the rest of the instruments to that piano dynamic, and in this case that works fine, right? Because pianissimo strings, piano harp, that is a really good background for just piano solo flute, right? Okay. All right, and then you have somewhere to go. Like this really can blossom. But mezzo piano to forte is not as big of a push as piano to forte in the middle here. But going on, the scoring is all good here. Little roll from timpani, bassoons, underpinning here along with the cellos. Little pizzicato pulse going on. That's good. Like, there were several entries that just continued to push every single bar right at the beginning, right? And this is the way to do it. Just a dash here, a dash there, and then gradual increasing of the frequency till you get to here. Okay, and just little touches of harp and so on. There's the first of those glissandos, and yeah, I really do like the way that this was all scored throughout the winds, and I'm not going to go on and on about slurs so much, especially since they pretty much work in the context of this piece. Just once again, maybe look at some of my other evaluations and think about like avoiding piano-like slurs in orchestral scoring. Like, for instance, this right in here. That just seems to me like, considering that this is a loud passage and the strings are competing against horns and the winds, it really would be better to group the bowing differently here, right? The winds are going to punch right in here. The flutes and oboes and clarinets, bassoons, they're all going to hit right in here, especially the horns. And whereas the violins are just going to be bowing across here and losing power as they go, right? The way that you've got this slur scored. It would have been better just to leave this tie here and then start slurring here, slur across to here, and then once again bow here at the end, right? That would give you the most power here in this like forte scoring. Okay, so but aside from like that kind of thing, I would say there's a couple of other strange things. Like right in here, you've got a slur in the first voice, which should be in the second voice, right? So there's a bit of proofreading, and here you've got a slur in the second voice, which should be in the first voice. So there are some things that needed to be edited. But that's all right. I won't get hung up on it in this entry, but I have no promises as to what I'm going to comment on, because it just depends on what I feel, what kind of help each person needs from me. All right, and just making sure not to just assume things. All right, so going on into the second part of this. All right, so we're getting here to this part. Boom, plunk. Yes, this all works great. This is pretty good scoring. Watch out, Eunice. There's a extra S right in here. Yeah, and in here once again was my caution to not repeat your strategies, even if it's a different instrument. Because I don't know if you noticed in the in the mock-up, the sound of piano oboe and the sound of mezzo piano flute in your sound sets that you're using are almost identical. There's a certain kind of limpid quality right here in this middle register of the oboe, the way that the programmers set up the sound set, right? So it really sounds. I mean, I actually looked at it twice, checked it out, and just to be absolutely sure, because I thought maybe you had originally scored this for flute and then exported that mock-up, and then. But I realized it's just a very, very breathy oboe sound. Okay. All right, da 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 da. Where's my bum bum? You put it here in second violin, but you don't support it with a wind instrument. I feel that that's an error because this is the actual melody. Da 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 da. And the F sharp is just a harmony note over the top, right? So if you just stuck in maybe a little clarinet right on this, da 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 da, then you can go ahead and kind of phrase up and then across, right? Now here we're getting to bum 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 bum. This is really interesting. That you sort of avoid kind of pussyfooting here, which frankly, I mean, that's the approach I took. Just kind of making it lighter and kind of bouncier as it is in the piano part. But we've got horns here. Here I would mark your winds up and your strings up, right? So here's where I would say mezzo piano would work great, right? So you're trying to blend together, or pianissimo horns right in here, right? So one way or another, the horns have got to be down a little bit, or else they will basically just obliterate. Their overtones will obliterate the flutes and the strings above them, or just you'll barely notice them, right? I don't know if you have a copy of my book, Eusebius, but and I've noticed even people who are at your level in the Patreon group, the Brev level, who I'm hoping everybody got their complimentary copy of 100 more orchestration tips, but there is a chapter in there that talks about the mutes, and it also talks about it also shows the basic wave shape, the fundamental wave shape of I shouldn't say fundamental, the basic wave shape of a French horn, and it shows that the body of the tone is an octave higher, and then a fifth higher, and then 2 octaves higher. Those are the overtones that are the strongest, right? So you have to really be careful scoring like this, so that the body of the horn's tone doesn't kill the fundamental of the string's tone, right? When you stack like this. So that's why it's always good to bring the horns down a bit. They are particularly notorious in soft textures like this for doing things like that. Okay, going on, and then we've got dun 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 celesta in staccato, pizzicato strings, and here you're really trying to balance things well, right? I would say, even though it doesn't really matter, I would mark the celesta forte here, right? I mean, that will bring the celesta up to the level of mezzo piano, maybe piano mezzo piano. It's such a soft instrument. But right now, piano on a celesta is pianissimo for everybody else, right? And since you already have inhabited this with pianissimo winds and pianissimo pizzicato strings, I say that the celesta will just be invisible here. So you want the player to apply some force, right? It's the celesta basically is an instrument whose dynamics go between piano and mezzo piano, right? Just kind of like it doesn't have the softest sound, even when the player is really trying to play softly, and it doesn't have a very loud sound at all at its loudest, right? So you basically just have to form the orchestration around it to make it really audible if you want it to stand out, right? So like, for instance, right in here, like I can see that you're really trying to balance things manfully, I would say, but you would have to bring the winds down up, this flute right in here to make the celesta audible, or just jump up an octave with your celesta, right? So like try not to have them play the same octave if they both need to be loud, that kind of thing. Okay. All right, so back to this. Dun 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 dun. A little bit of arpeggiation there. All right, and then ba da 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 dum. All right, so right in here, you really are like you're leading the listener to a place. Like it's just like, hey, this is happening, right? So I'm not saying it's a bad idea to put in this little run right in here, but I'm just saying, like, do you need that much direction? So it's almost like a camera zoom in a documentary. Have you noticed like those documentaries on the Discovery Channel or the History Channel or something like that, where like everything is just like zoom, whoosh, the camera just like whenever the camera pans, like they have to add like a sound to it, right? So I'm not saying that this is like that, but I'm just saying there's a touch here of stage directing the motion of the music, right? So just watch out. Is all I'm going to say. Not that said, it's not a bad effect at all, but yeah, the music is already doing what it needs to do here. Bum 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 bum. So you've got pretty much like just a redoubling tremolo strings and winds right in here, and then you add another layer here of inside that of trombones, and it's nicely balanced the way that you've got it right in here. Mezzo piano, trombones, but you know what? You should go down to pianissimo at the end, right? Because it really does. I mean, it's just easier for everybody to balance. The players will not have to think about it, and especially also since you're doing a pianissimo roll here, and you've got mid-range harp right in here playing this little figure, right? So it's way easier for the harp to be heard in front of pianissimo trombones as opposed to piano trombones, all right? Now here you say second trombone, and I'm not sure why you'd need to have that be the second. I think that the first trombone player would be my preference, because I would just trust their ear more, right? Just like whenever, I'm not saying that you should always use just the first trombone for everything, but like if you're just tuning a chord like this, I would kind of want I would want the security of the first trombonist to blend together with this bassoon and so on. So there was this one other thing I wanted to say. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. It's all good. Okay, and here we've got our little downward glissando, bum, 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 bum. So yeah, just in terms of gesturing, you're already, you're sort of showing us, you are emphasizing the direction of the music here, and then you're re-emphasizing it there, right? So that's these are just like, will the emphasis become the noticeable thing as opposed to the direction of the music is the thing I want you to think about, all right? And then bum, 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 everything about this is fine, and I really love this little note of warning here, right? This sort of the stopped horns. That's beautiful. Okay, well, I mean, stopped horn sound isn't beautiful, but the effect is beautiful. And then with muted trumpets on top. Now we start to get a little head of steam here. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, and just nice adding of harp in here. Well, just say one thing about your harp. You are really avoiding adding any kind of mindful dynamic as the music goes onwards, right? So I mean, not to be a jerk about it or critique it too harshly, but if you've got this, if you've got mezzo forte happening right in here, and you've got the muted, the very pointy sound even at piano, muted sound right in here, and the snarly horns. Shouldn't there be a dynamic right here of at least forte, right? Forte diminuendo, and then picking up right in here, we should have hairpins, right, in the harp part, maybe taking us all the way up to fortissimo for harp, right, so that we can really put that sound up in front. And the same thing here, I would also mark forte on the celesta. I mean, you won't get more than a mezzo piano, but just to have more of a chance of those sounds coming through. That said, there's nothing really wrong with this, and it actually is really beautiful scoring. As I observed before, once again, right, we've got solo wind entrances at significant parts, right? So maybe just maybe the doubling from the first violin could start here, right? So that there's more of a string sound at the beginning. But then again, I'm just like, I don't want to rewrite your piece for you, or rewrite your arrangement. But just maybe there's a way of keeping the variety going. Okay, but this is all good. I like the way that there is the presence of strings in this wind texture in a way that makes it feel orchestral and takes it away from the more band sound, right? Now on the next page, we've got that second da 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 da. So once again, we've got a gesture. Hey, look up here, right? So so just watch out. Sorry, I'm not mocking your arrangement at all, but I'm just trying to express to you, where the ear is going when you add a gesture like that, or this right here. Once again, another glissando, right? Because I feel it takes away from this effect right in here. It's really beautiful scoring, As I was saying, Holst-like, not really, not that Holst did this exactly, but there's something very, there's something that is similar, like there's a resonance here between this and, say, Neptune, or Venus. Okay, so this once again, the scoring is excellent. I mean, this just it's really good. I really hope that people will watch this video and pick up from it just like great ideas and an example of very strong scoring. What I think might work right in here. I'm not going to say better, but what might really support right in here. One of the problems that we've got here is that I just feel like that these trumpets right in here need a little bit of like on the top line needs a little bit of sweetening from the strings, right? So that you're kind of keeping the strings under or inside the trumpet part right in here. Okay, so I feel like you could have easily just scored octaves here for first violin, and once again we've got the solo oboe entrance, right? Beginning a phrase. So maybe an approach here to sort of keep the ear a little bit more grounded might be to double, first doubling the oboe here and then turning to octaves there, and then you get the support, both of the A2 flutes. And here, you can just save a lot of vertical space just by writing A2, A2A right in here. And then you get a little bit of cushion to the top line right here with the trumpets, which, at mezzo piano versus violins going to, headed for mezzo forte or forte, I feel you should have a destination dynamic here. Then then I just feel that this is filled in a little bit more, right? I could really kind of feel a space right in here. I mean, you can see a space, right? Which, I mean, the trumpets do sort of fill, but then it's a kind of has a kind of a, maybe a slightly more muscular quality filling that space than you might want, right? Because this is all about delicacy, right? Okay, and nice resolution here at the end. People are doing really beautiful resolutions. They're scoring them. I rarely have a problem talking, there rarely are things to point out. All right, and then here, we've got, I think that if you're going to have, if you're going to differentiate here, you should really mark it obviously. I would say, non-arp, and then you've got the roll, and then just write sim, right? Just so that it's really specific, because the default for harpists is to roll, right? So this is going to get a raised hand at rehearsal. So, by, I would say 50% chance or 40% chance you'll get asked about it by the harpist, right? So I would say just say save the times, write non-arp here, and then it's really obvious, like, oh yeah, right. No roll, roll, no roll, roll. He didn't just leave a few out because he was copy-pasting, right? So harpists these days are keenly aware of copy-paste errors because especially, they just know that they're going to be, they're going to run into 100 scores in their process of reading scores for readings or for rehearsals, or like a lot of times harpists get hired to play university concerts because they don't have, there isn't a harpist at the university. There isn't a student harpist, or the student harpists aren't good enough, right? So the pro harpist will come in, they'll get hired to play the university gig of the university composers, right? So they'll run into copy-paste errors all the time because of that. And a lot of the copy-pasting is right from the piano score, right? So that's why you get a raised hand here, even though you feel you're making it really obvious. And then they'll also look at this and they'll see that really it's an identical, right? It's pretty much identical scoring both times. Here you got you have the stem direction different because there is no second voice the second time. But basically it's the same thing twice, right? So anyways, I'm just saying, just make it doesn't hurt at all to just make it really clear, non-arp, then you got the roll, and then sim, right? That just lets the player know, just being polite. This is really lovely right in here. The violas doubling the cellos, that's really kind of a cool effect, right? And then this nice kind of soaring effect. Now, once again here, I do not know what this is, but this is yet another example of strings an octave below, wind an octave higher in this section, right? So this was just a decision that lots of people made to have an exposed woodwind playing an octave above the strings, right? So a lot of people came up with this idea, and I'm just wondering what it is about it that, if there is some bit of scoring that is reminiscent of this or whatever. But anyways, here you make a really good decision in bringing in the second oboe player so that you don't have to climb stratospherically high every single time. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, that's lovely, that little ripple upwards. Oboe doubling first, violas doubling first oboe. That all works great. Okay, so now we get to our bustling ending. All right, so Lili's afternoon out in the beautiful garden is coming to an end. And so now she is her memory is crystallizing, right? The whole experience of it is being remembered forever. So if there's one critique I would have about this ending section, and that is, I'm just wondering if the pedal could have been varied from part to part. Do you know what I mean? And I think you make some efforts, right? But I think maybe there is a place or two where there could have been some changes. All right, so that said, I mean, I do like the way that you start off, but I feel that you should, especially since the sound of tuba is just such a projecting sound. I feel that you should have like eased out, right? Just really made sure that the sustained sound of the tuba blended into the ongoing sound of the double basses, right? So just a little hairpin going out. Okay, but this is really nice. Clarinets plus trombones. I think here you can have the clarinets playing at piano. I think that would be a good balance here, right? Especially if you're going to have the horns going, that's just really going to obliterate the clarinets right in there. So yeah, so doubling, we got octave, violas and cellos. We've got octave horns and oboes. So that's a really lovely way to start. And you've got some artificial harmonics here, bringing out those Bs. You've got celesta chiming downwards on the intervals, and you've got the harp sort of rippling backwards and forwards. Yeah, that really lovely approach with flute. Okay, so this is really, really good. First, your very first approach is great. Okay, so now let's take a look at the next one. Boom, and we've got the same B again, right? Same tuba, same harmonization here on trombones, which is actually a good thing for them to do. I mean, like, trombone players are really great at filling in harmony in the middle. Okay, and then sort of taking the place of other harmonic elements here, like the clarinets and so on. We've got tremolo strings, okay? And, here you're going pianissimo crescendo to what? I would say tell them that they're going upward to piano, right? Like right in here. Okay, and I don't see any reason why the double basses need to get louder unless everybody is getting slightly louder, right? So there isn't really, it's very, very mixed in here what you're expecting the sound picture to be, right? So unless, like, maybe you just stuck the mezzo piano in there, but then when it came down to it, like, there wasn't really a noticeable increase overall, so maybe you should have come back here and just made this piano again. Okay, yeah, so there isn't, you're starting a little louder on your melody here, which is very cool. The clarinet and, so, I don't know, second clarinet, okay, so clarinet and flute in octaves, and then you've got your little chiming downwards, this time, of course, with the celesta doing what the harp did before in a different harmonic context, along with, this is interesting, horns, right, on the bottom, and then piccolo, oboes, and clarinet. And this is a really beautiful texture, by the way, just like the piccolo really playing right on the overtone of the oboe, and it makes it just a beautiful, bright sound. I'm almost wondering if that isn't early, right? Like, since it's such a ringing, clear sound. Now, this gets all the way down here into like the bottom octave for most celestas. There are some celestas that are made that go even lower, but you just really can't count on them because they're pretty rare. Yeah, C below middle C, lowest standard note. Keeping in mind that things kind of get sort of clunky down in here, and especially if you're playing like rippling octaves, or excuse me, rippling arpeggiation on it, really kind of hear the kind of a attack going in behind, kind of dully chiming notes, right? Go have a listen to. Like, see if you can find it online. I think that somebody's uploaded to YouTube the Roger Wagner ensemble version of Villa-Lobos, his piece. It's a Quartetto Simbolico, right? It's with harp, celesta, alto saxophone, flute, and a chorus of women's voices. Beautiful piece, like, just an amazing piece. And like the celesta part in that is fantastic. And that, everything you possibly would ever need to know about how celesta sounds is right there in that piece. Okay. All right. So, okay. So now we're getting to, and I can see where there is a dynamic build in here, right? Because you're getting towards the horns, or sorry, the brass right in here. Okay, so maybe there could be just a bit more of an inflation of dynamics. So I'll change what I said about mezzo piano on that double bass note, but just everybody needs to be stronger right in here, okay? It's okay to bring things up. There's another feature of mezzo dynamics. I know I'm just on the warpath for mezzo dynamics. Mezzo dynamics on the way to other dynamics is also something that's fine, right? It's just the heightened emotion of solo instruments should just really be avoided starting on a mezzo dynamic. Okay, and also the sense of default, right? Oh well, just I'm going to start here in the middle, so I'll just start on mezzo piano, right? So that's another thing to avoid. Not that you do that, but I've just seen that in a lot of scores. Okay, all right, so now we've got bassoon, harp, once again trombone, playing a low B, and so right in here is where I'm just kind of feeling that the same strategy for that underpinning note tends to happen quite a bit, right? I'm wondering if there could have been a part right in here where maybe bass trombone and tuba could have taken up that octave together, right? Or played it as an octave. Okay, of course I would mess up all of your calculations in here. And sorry about that. Now, here, I'll talk about this in a second. All right, I don't want to get ahead of myself. All right. Yeah, so I'm noticing just in general, there is I think you forgot to interlock your horns, or maybe you were scoring this as 1 3 2 4, but you forgot to change that over here. All right, so it could just be an editing thing, but generally speaking, if you did want it 1 2 3 4, you would want to interlock the harmony here with the what you've got scored here for the second horn being on the third, and vice versa. All right, so now we've got even more emphatic here. Octaves in the strings, like a triple octave in the strings, and a triple octave in our winds, with notes really in their most comfortable zone on your winds. That's really great scoring, and also leaving a little bit of space here for the other players to come in, and then for everybody to sort of drape down together. Yeah, that's some cool scoring. Kind of wondering whether or not this last D here could have had a hairpin under it, right? So, and same thing here, this concert D in the second clarinet could have had a little hairpin under it so that it would blend in, the sound of the same thing here under the piccolo, so that those sounds would just blend into the winds, the ongoing string timbre, right? And then this would have a nice clean entrance right in here. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, that's all cool. Once again, celesta, harp, and so on. All pretty standard. Okay. Now, let's talk about this. All right, so especially here, this is what makes me think that you kind of spaced out on 1 and 3, 2 and 4, because right in here I would absolutely, I guess it's off 4 unison, right? So, but that is going to be a massive sound right in here. I almost wonder whether or not you actually need all 4 horns on this. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's just becoming very very huge in there, and I really do like I like what's going on here, and the kind of dropping down, or sort of cascading down on the trumpet, going across the trumpet's range in a beautiful way. It's a really great use of the trumpet here, and starting forte on that high B would be the way to play it, or yeah. So so no huge problems here, except I just don't know if you really need. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess that balances because you're really pushing here with the trombone. So, yeah, I guess all four horns. But just, being aware that it's going to be, like after this, which is more delicate, this is going to be an extremely swashbuckling texture. All right. Maybe if this was just two horns and then this came in a little softer and then pushed towards forte by the end, right? Because it's strange, like, see here, you're going forte, crescendo to forte. It doesn't really make any sense. So maybe you originally intended for this to be mezzo forte. So that would be fine with me. Mezzo forte here, and then just first and third horn right in here. And then that gives, then you could change to B octaves here, and you could fill in this voice, right? This could be played by second and fourth horn, right? Then that would balance really great, and then you'd have some variation here, just something really rock bottom here, for the for that low B, which would be kind of a bit of a bit of a variation to the ear, and then you can have those basses come right back in here. All right. Anyway, it's just a suggestion, and I really like the roll on the 5 rather than the 1 right in here. That's great. Okay, and then that just leaves us with this little part at the end. So people are kind of wondering, I really said that I wasn't going to go past D in my evaluations for Brev, but it's just a few more minutes. I'll, especially considering how long everybody had to wait past the dotted semi-brev level to get their evaluations, I feel it's only fair. And it's just a few more minutes for me, and it's fascinating, and I love to talk about it. So I'm just gonna throw you guys a break here, all my brev entrants. And if you did the end of the piece, I will comment on it. Maybe not in as much detail as I would normally, but yeah. Okay, and then you've got this glissando back and forth. So I feel this is just yet another reason why you shouldn't glissando too much at the beginning of the piece, right? Because you already are doing this back and forth here. Yeah, you know what I mean? It may be just too much glissando, right? Just in general, if it weren't for the issue of the gesture, right? Okay, and then you've got horn, piano. I would say pianissimo. Okay, all right. If you're going to double with viola. And especially if you're marking pianissimo for this and you've got the celesta up there, and just bring the horn down. It's really only the violas that need to be piano here. All right. And this can be pianissimo. It doesn't have to be triple P, especially if you're going to have the timpani doubling. All right, so it's a beautiful texture there right at the end. Really nice. So an excellent entry, Eusebius, and give my regards to Florestan. And I really hope to see you in 2021 for our next evaluation. And you have got, really good perspectives here on scoring that I'm seeing. So I think your thoughts would be really valuable to our other participants at the Brev level. So if you could just drop some comments there on some of the entries that I have evaluated up to now, and the ones that are going to be coming over the next couple of days on the Patreon feed, it would really be invaluable to me. Or just comment in the YouTube comments. It would really be great. It would be so much appreciated. So anyways, thank you so much for supporting the channel, and for such a long time you've been a member of the community, and have just been, it's been great chatting with you too, kind of on the back channel, and I just really hope that right now you are doing great things with your career, and that you're getting all the work that you need, because obviously by this score you are capable of quite a bit. For me, a little bit of breakfast and then on to the next evaluation this morning.